Good afternoon, Stampers. Today I wanted to show you something quickly and really for the benefit of myself and for some of my patrons on my Etsy store. I've been selling these little shaggy bracelets and I wanted to give the purchaser an option to, it comes in a little bag like this, but I thought they might want to give it as a gift, so I thought I would make a box. Well, trying to ship it with this box and making the box get there intact and not be all banged up was quite the challenge. So I thought I would come up with a way to make a flat box that they could easily fold up and assemble themselves. Sort of like those gift boxes you get at Christmas time to put shirts in and stuff. So I'm going to show really quick how I used the Stampin' Up! Either gift box punch board or the envelope punch board to make a box that would be more like this cute little blue Tiffany box that has a lid, and it's very sturdy and easy enough to hold the bracelet, or even a bracelet that's even heavier than this, and some tissue, and then cutely put it into the box, and it fits nicely and snug, and they can tie a nice red ribbon around it like a Tiffany box or a white ribbon. I have this little powder blue paper, but I'm going to show you today on pink because I think it'll show up a little bit more for the video. So this is what we're going to try to accomplish instead of the type box that the actual punch board makes without any modifications. So if you use the punch board for making gift boxes, this is what it looks like. You can make these sizes. And I wanted the 3 1/4 by 3 1/4 square box, but I didn't want it 2 1/2 inches deep. That was just a little bit too deep. I wanted it to be a little bit more shallow, like it would hold a bracelet. Well, the next step up, or down is 1 3/4, and that was too shallow. So I really needed something in between. So I can accomplish the same thing using the envelope punch board. If you use the gift box punch board, it makes a box, and I've trimmed the tips of this off so you can't really see how it goes together. But this is what it makes, is this little box, and you fold it in, and it has a little punch here on the end that makes a little curly-cue thing so that you can push the ends together and they lock. But you can see that that's kind of flimsy for something the weight of a bracelet, especially if you wanted to put a ribbon around it and give it in the box. Now you can make it with designer paper. It won't be quite as sturdy, but I'm making these with cardstock. So I'm not going to use the punch board today, but you can use the punch board and make this same box. It's just I don't need it today because I want to make a different size. So I'm going to use the envelope punch board instead because I want to make my box not as shallow as 1 3/4 and not really 2 1/2, which is what the gift box board does. Now there is a link below that has a tool on it from the Crafty Owl, and it's called the Box Buster, and you just put in your dimensions of what box you want, and it will calculate what you need to score it on your envelope punch board, which is very clever of her and wonderful of her to furnish that for everyone free of charge. So I'm going to use her measurements, which she gave me, for the box size that I wanted, which is the bottom piece of my box is going to be one size and the top is going to be another. So this is my bottom, and I cut my piece of paper at 7 5/8 square. It's always a square when you use these tools, unless you follow Amy Pierce's site, and she tells you how to make them oblong and other sizes, but those would not work for what I wanted either. So I'm going to use my envelope punch board. I'm going to use a 7 5/8 inch square. For you that have purchased a bracelet from me on the Etsy and you want to know how to assemble your box, you can skip ahead to the part where we fold it up. So I'm going to put it on this envelope punch board, and I'm going to score it. I'm going to do this reverse so you can see it. It'll be for you to see. And I'm going to score it at 2 3/4. So I'm going to punch and score it at 2 3/4. So I can do this backwards. Might be harder than it looks to do backwards. Yes, it is. I will turn it slightly so I can get a better angle on it. So 2 3/4. And just score down the score line, just as if you were making the envelopes. And I kind of do it twice since this is cardstock. Okay, now you're just going to slide it over to the next stop that she tells you just cut to score it at, which is 4 7/8. I'm going to score it right there at 4 7/8. and punch. Okay, now you're just going to turn and do the same thing again. You're going to line this up with, just like you were making an envelope, you're going to line it up with this score line and score and punch. Slide it to the next score line and score right there. Turn it 90 degrees. Line it up with that score line. And it should just pretty much line up every time, of course, to your 2 3/4 and 4 7/8. If not, it can be just a little bit off, but if you want to be, you know, make sure that it is exactly right, just make sure it's measured the same, because this is a square. And 4 7/8. And then turn one more time. You're going to have 2 punches each time, because this is the edge of your box. This is the top part, or flat top. For this is the bottom, of course. So this would be the bottom of the box. And you see, these pretty much line up, because if you punched it correctly, measured correctly, these little notches, once you've turned it, they should line up with the little ditch right here to show that you do have it on the right places. And line this one up. You see that lines up there. And punch. Okay, so that you end up with this. Now this is going to be the bottom. So now I want to do the same thing for the top, but the top needs to be just a little bit bigger to go down over the thickness of this box. So I've cut this piece at 7 3/4, and all we're going to do is we're going to change the measurement, the first measurement, which is the 2 3/4 measurement, to 2 7/8. We're going to add 1/8 of an inch to give it that thickness variation, because the difference in the box is about almost 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to move it over to 3 7/8. And we're going to do the same thing again, just like we did before. Score down. And I'm going to keep it the same thickness as the other, so it'll be 4 7/8. That measurement did not change. Only the thickness of the top or bottom square is all that changed. Turn it and do the same thing again. And 4 7/8. This is really hard to do at an angle. You have to really hold your tongue right. If I was ambidextrous, I could do it probably upside down easier, because I could do it with my other hand. Okay, and then 2 7/8. Oh, and see, this doesn't quite line up, so I'm going to just move it to line up, because I must have gotten one of them just a little bit off. Or my paper could have been cut not quite square. You know, every paper trimmer is different, and I do suggest, if you're using, you know, a Creative Memories or a Stampin' Up product, that you use their trimmer. If you're going to use one of their tools, use all of their tools, because the measurements may not be the same if you start mixing up manufacturers. Okay, so there's our 2 pieces. Everything is scored. Now, if you were using the gift box board, it has this diagonal score right here. And what that diagonal score does is it puts a score line right here so that this part folds in easily. Well, since I didn't use this, my lines aren't going to line up for me to be able to make that little diagonal. So I'm just going to, as my British friends would say, pop in my trimmer here, and I'm just going to lay it so that this little, where the X is formed from the score lines, I'm going to lay it in the trough. Just line up those 2 X's right there. And then I'm just going to use the scoring part of my tool just to make a little bit of a score in right there. Just to make a little bit of a dent, to make it easier to fold down. So you just line that up in your crosshairs of the folds. And just, you can see how far down to go. Just don't go past where the other score lines are. Now, if you were using the gift box punch, it actually will stops right there, so you can't go too far. But as I said, we're not using that because I didn't like the mesh, didn't like the size of the box. But you can use the same format using the box. Okay. Oops. Didn't get enough of that score. Let's try that again. A little bit more of that. Right there. Yeah. I thought this pink paper might be easier to see, but I'm not sure if it's not harder to see than the dark color. Okay, so there's my little scores that I put in there. And on your other board, it's called the diagonal score. Now, to make the box so that it's a lid and a bottom, I'm going to take two sides, fold them in like that. Take these two sides, fold them in like that. Now, you see where the flap crosses over this fold. There's a fold right here. You can see where this crosses over. I'm just going to take my scissor and I'm going to trim this off. You can actually lay your scissor there and you can feel the ditch of the score line. And I'm just going to cut this off even with that so that it comes just like that so that this would fold up and not be in the way. Just enough of it trimmed off right up to where the bump is on that fold line. And I'm going to do that on all four sides. Now, if you're, really anal and you want to measure it and draw a pencil line, use your trimmer, you could do all that. Completely unnecessary. Because just the snip with the scissors is just fine. So there we have this. I'm going to do the same thing with the lid. Put it on there. Trim that off. And if you had a big scissor, of course, you could just make it in one fell swoop. I'm using these little scissors because all my other scissors and trimmers are all boxed up, ready to go to Guntersville, Alabama for the scrapbooking retreat with my girlfriends. Okay, so this is the top, this is the bottom. Now, if you have received a bracelet or a necklace or a piece of jewelry from me and you have the box in your package, it will come to you with sticky strip on it that all you have to do is remove the sticky strip. Today we're just going to use these glue dots. But when you open your package of your envelope with your jewelry item in it and your box, it'll look like that. These two will already be glued down and this will be folded like this. So what we're going to do is you'll have sticky strip on the outside of yours. Right now I'm going to use glue dots for the tutorial. And I'm going to put a glue dot on each of the outside of the box. Right here, just put a little glue dot kind of close to the edge on one side of the little triangle that the diagonal score made. So you got sticky here, 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 and here. Okay? Now, all you have to do, because we've already pre-folded everything, you're just going to push that in toward the inside. That just goes inside like that. And you're just going to push the two sides together. And that's going to stick together because the glue dot is there. The people who purchase the jewelry, yours will have you're going to peel off the little piece of paper off the sticky strip. And you're going to do the same thing. Just push the two sides together. Push it in. Push the two sides together. Just lining up your outside edge here. Push together. And push it together. Okay, now you have this. Okay, well I didn't like that either because that really wasn't finished in my opinion. So I want to make sure my little flaps that the inside fold inside made, these little flaps in here, I want them to go toward the side that's not glued down. Push them toward that direction. And then you're going to peel off the sticky strip you have here. I'll put a couple of glue dots there so you can see how this works. Okay, and you'll pull off your little sticky strip, lay it down on its side, make sure your little flaps are down, and you're just going to fold this in on top of those flaps and press real hard. If you have a bone folder or if you're actually doing the tutorial, use your bone folder from your scoring tool, from your envelope punch board, and smooth that down so that you have that. I'll do the same thing over here. Fold that in. Use your bone folder to make it nice and firm. Okay, so that is the bottom of our box, all nice and neat. Okay, we're going to do the same thing with the top. And if you're just making the tutorial and you're not assembling your pre-made box that I've sent you, glue dots are fine. You could even use Tombow glue or liquid glue. A lot of people don't like to use the liquid glue. I do, because I know it's going to stay put. Put your glue dot there. And some people say, why do you have a ribbon around your glue dots? Well, if you're a crafter and you've used these Stampin' Up! Glue dots before, you know that if you let this little piece of paper get loose and it's on your table somewhere, by God, it's going to be stuck to something. And you're going to be looking for your glue dots, and you're going to pick up your stapler or your scoring tool, and it's going to be hanging on it because they are unruly. So we're just going to fold in these two sides that are not going to be used. Whoops. See? Glue dots. We're going to fold in our corners. And just line those up. Line those up. Now, if you really wanted to make your box really, really sturdy, for you that are making it from scratch, you can put more glue here to hold those down in place before you fold in your side flaps, just to make a double assurity that it is nice and firm. Okay, so there's our side. We'll turn it up on its side. We're going to make sure these are pressed down toward the direction we want to go. Fold in our flap. Use our tool. Smooth it out. At home, if you don't have a bone folder, or something like that, you can use a plastic spoon. Don't use a real spoon or a real knife because it'll scar the paper. But a plastic spoon, you know, from your lunch will work. And there's our top. Now it's perfectly ready for us to put a little piece of tissue in there, put our jewelry down inside, and pop our lid on. And we got a nice, firm, perfectly packed box that you can tie a lovely bow around. Now, if you wanted to make it out of designer paper, it'd just be a little bit flimsier. You wouldn't probably even need to make the top and bottom different, because the thickness of it would not be enough to make up 1/8 of an inch. Or if you wanted to take your cardstock and stamp on it first, you could do that. I wanted mine to look like a Tiffany's box, so I just made it plain. And that's our neat little box using our envelope punch board or our gift box punch board from Stampin' Up! And you can find these two on my blog or on my website, and the links are listed below. If you have questions, please email me, or you can call me on my phone or message me. Have a great day stamping!